Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, greetings, bucketheads. Mavar Tagar. Welcome to our 316th Ryloth returning episode of Mandovision. I am your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. We are so glad you're here. Make sure you're reaching out to us on the socials at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram, Mandovision at Blue Sky, and you can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Bucketheads, we are back for another Star Wars Rebels rewatch episode. And this one hits on those family themes that we've talked about a lot on our rewatch of the series. And we get to pull back some layers on another one of our main characters. This time looking at the past of Hera Syndulla, our mother figure of this family dynamic that the Spectres have constructed for themselves. But this time, we're looking at her father and how that has shaped who she is as we move into these episodes. And it's a great one because it's also a callback to a character from the early seasons of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Sham Syndulla, the legendary hero of the liberator of Ryloth, and a big deal, you know, in connecting these characters. Obviously, when Rebels was first announced and Hera Syndulla, her name was dropped, obviously everyone made that connection. I believe at the time, Disney sort of refuted, Lucasfilm sort of downplayed their connection. Like, oh, no, that's Hera's uncle. Well, something changed, or they just were trying to misdirect us a little bit. Because, yes, Sham and Hera, father-daughter, got that strong dynamic going on. But you know, while Sham is very focused on Ryloth, his daughter, to his dismay, more focused on the galaxy at large and fighting the Empire as a whole, not just trying to liberate Ryloth itself. And that puts them at odds. And that is the bulk of our episode. Now, we also get some callbacks to some other characters who showed up with Sham Syndulla in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I am, of course, referring to Gobi Glib. Glib? And Numa, who was a small child rescued by Boyle and some of the other clones at the time, and I believe she even wears a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? In tribute to Boyle, she wears like the bat crest on her on a piece of her shoulder piece, I believe, and pretty cool. I'm sorry, no, hold on. No, I got that right. I can't even read my handwriting, friends. I'm so sorry. And then, if you look closely at her tunic too, you'll see some illustrations like faded of the Tuca doll that she used to carry along with her as a child in those early episodes of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And she is, of course, voiced by Catherine Taber, who did the voice of Padme Amidala in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which is very, very cool. A lot of neat stuff in this episode. There are some things that I really, really do enjoy about this episode. I think there are some really telling moments about Hera as a person in this episode. And so we're going to talk about all of those things as we get into it. But first, as we always do, we will do the episode particulars. So this is Star Wars Rebels, Season 2, Episode 15, Homecoming. Original air date was February 17th, 2016. Directed by Bosco NG. Written by Stephen Melching. Our primary cast for this week, of course, you know the main players, but there's a lot of other callbacks in this one. Some Clone Wars legends, if you will. Taylor Gray is as Ezra Bridger. Vanessa Marshall is Hera Syndulla. Freddie Prinze Jr. is Kanan Jarrus. Tier Sakar as Sabine Wren. Steve Blum is Zeb Orielos. Dave Filoni is Chopper. Corey Burton returns as the carrier captain Phoenix 3, Imperial Officer number 3, and Gobi Glee. Robert Atkin Downs returns as Sham Syndulla, the Rebel Captain and Imperial Officer number 2. Keon Young is, of course, Commander Sato, and Catherine Taber as Numa. Our plot for this week's episode? Well, I kind of gave it to you already. The Ghost Crew journeys to Ryloth to aid a rebel cell. All right, and with that being said, friends, I think it's time that we just go ahead and get into it. So what do you say? We talk about the episode. You know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off.
You're going to have to relocate the covert.
This is the way.
This is the way.
So before we really go on, as I generally tend to not mess with the introduction of the episode, but I do want to take a special moment to say that this is episode 316, which means we have to give a little something extra for the effort, which is Mandovision 316 said, I just whooped your podcast. I did it. That's it. Let's get on with the show, friends. Okay. So we open the episode. Phoenix Squadron's in a bit of trouble. They are doing a cargo transfer. It doesn't go well. They lose another A-Wing pilot. And while they do escape to hyperspace, there is concern because since the rebels have been chased off of their previous base, they still have nowhere to sort of rally. And they're trying to figure out how do they get more pilots? How do they protect their ships? You know, they're starting to really feel the strain. Even though they are successful, like the Empire can just chip away because they are so small. And so Commander Sato informs them that, hey, this Imperial carrier just arrived over a world where we happen to have a rebel presence. And it just so happens that world is Ryloth. And guess what? Hera Syndulla is a Twi'lek. So it would be a homecoming of sorts in theory. But yes, it is. We don't want to assume that Hera's from Ryloth, but of course she is. She is Syndulla. She is the daughter of Sham Syndulla, as we quickly find out. Before we get the big title card, the reveal that Sham Syndulla, the legendary character, the legendary hero of the Clone Wars, is in fact, to no one's surprise, Hera's father. So we're gonna go catch up with Sham Syndulla on a mission to capture an Imperial carrier. Except, as we are going to find out, Sham and his rebel cell with again familiar characters like Gobi Glee and Numa, who we saw in Star Wars: The Clone Wars with him. They have captured themselves a TIE bomber, and this is part of the plan that Hera constructs to get aboard the carrier, infiltrate it, capture it, and take it for the rebellion. However, Sham Syndulla is a bit more interested in big messages. Like, basically, Empire, you are not wanted here. Go home. So he wants to see that carrier crashing in flames to the surface of Ryloth. Now, they appear to make a compromise. Kanan appears to help them meet in the middle here. But that's not to be the case, as we know. Now, I want to go back because as we meet up with this cell on Ryloth, I think it's really cute. I think it's amusing. The nervousness of Kanan Jarrus as he meets Hera's father for the first time. Not only is it Hera's father, the person he is in a relationship with, but it's Sham Syndulla, a legendary figure from a great hero from the Clone Wars when he was just a boy. And Kanan heard all the stories of Sham Syndulla and the missions he went on with Mace Windu, which they talk about later in this episode. I find it very cute the way he sort of steps around, can't introduce his comrades correctly, points at them and says the wrong names at all of them, doesn't mention Chopper at all. I find all of that to be very, very, very entertaining. And the fact that Hera sees a lot of the old things that she saw in her dad, like the sort of I don't know, the sort of just remembering of the past and living there at these moments and telling these stories that she's heard dozens, if not more times, and having Kanan just kind of eating it up, lapping it up as he goes. I find all of this insanely amusing, but it changes quickly because, even before that, because there is a moment where Sham and Hera have a private moment together. Sham recognizes Chopper as the old astromech that Hera had found during the Clone Wars as a child, which is something that's confirmed later on in the Bad Batch when we go back to Ryloth and catch up with the Syndullas. And we begin to see the divide between Cham and Hera at this point. Basically, Cham calling her out for not being devoted to the cause of liberating Ryloth. And I guess Hera, the best way to put it is that she believes that that's too short-sighted. That by not taking on the Empire in a more direct fashion, that Ryloth would never be safe. Even if they kicked them off the planet, they would only be a temporary solution. But as their argument escalates, what I think is very fascinating is the slip of Hera back into what we know as the Twi'lek accent, which is very French resistance, which was sort of like the designated accent of the Twi'leks from the Clone Wars era on. Obviously, we heard that again more recently in Andor for the Gorman, and again that was played off like very differently and executed very, very well. So I didn't butt up against it as all of like these two different peoples having similar accents, and the fact that we even got like a very again, it's still comparing apples and oranges, and I'm not going to bother to butt heads with the fact that they both had sort of that French accent. Making these connections for the audience, I think, is important. So I think we can, as an audience, accept they have some similar accents, and that's okay because they have very distinct languages, and I think that's the cool part. I think that was a level of detail in with the Gorman that was so fascinating for those episodes as we sort of watched the genocide of those people. The Twi'lek language obviously is quite different, and as we know, well, it's different. We'll just leave it at that for now. So as we exit hyperspace above Ryloth, the combined rebel cells, they board the stolen TIE bomber, and the plan is for them to seize the carrier while the TIE bombers are on a bombing run over Ryloth. And that's when Hera will signal for the A-Wings to chase them back to the carrier. And that way they can land aboard the carrier and infiltrate the ship. It works out pretty well. Hera's able to crash the ship pretty hard, honestly, but she wants to make it look legitimate. All right? And it's at this point that our Twi'lek rebel cells, we find out they brought some explosives on board. But what? They weren't supposed to explode the ship. Well, the Twi'leks had other plans, and that is they don't care about the rebels needing this carrier for their own purposes. Sham Syndulla wants to blow up the ship and send a message, and that's what they're going to do, gosh darn it. So the Twi'leks turn on the Spectres, stunning them, knocking them out, and getting going with their own plan. It's the deception, the sadness, the deception. But eventually our heroes do wake up, and Sham and his team have taken care of the initial Imperial forces that came to deal with a crashed TIE fighter, a crashed TIE bomber, if you will. Sham goes ahead to sabotage the ship's hyperdrive so they can't get anywhere. But Ezra and Kanan are up, and they are in hot pursuit, fighting down corridors, dodging blast doors, using lightsabers left and right. It's a really cool sequence, the way they throw each other. They sort of do like a relay of using the Force to throw each other through these blast doors as quickly as possible. And when one closes in their face, we get Kanan cutting his way through it. They make their way to the bridge, Hera and Chopper and right behind them. And we get to see Ezra dropping the Force trick on the Imperial commander. Meanwhile, Sabine and Zeb, they are in pursuit of Gobi and Numi. Numi? Did I get that right? Numa, excuse me. And they're going to use a mouse droid to sort of disable, to sort of stun them and knock them out. So at this point, with part of Sham's forces knocked out and unable to complete the plan, Sham runs into the crew of the Ghosts And this is when Hera and Shem have to reason with each other, where she sort of tells him that if they destroy the carrier, the Empire's only going to send more. Like, this isn't the end. This won't stop anything. But if they steal the carrier, it could be used against the Empire. And this is when Sham's still not buying it, because he wants his daughter to know, like, she's missed a lot of what's going on in Ryloth when she decided to abandon them to pursue this. And, you know, again, it's the planet's resources, like spice and things like that, and also the enslavement of the Twi'leks. So he wants to use that carrier's destruction to demonstrate that the Twi'lek rebels are not to be trifled with. Hera, again, it's a great back and forth between two characters, okay? Because obviously Hera wants Ryloth to be free, but she knows that defeating the Empire is a way to ensure that freedom, right? And this is when Sabine plays a conversation of this conversation to Numa and Gobi, and they side with Hera. They understand. They begin to see the bigger picture. So by now the Empire's figured out that something bad's going on, because there is a light cruiser nearby, and when Ezra uses the mind trick, he has the captain tell them to abandon ship, that this isn't good. So that alerts the light cruiser nearby that something is amiss on the ship. So now the Empire's coming to figure out what the heck's going on and retake the ship. But our rebel friends all come together now, and they work things out, and they come up with a plan to get everyone what they want, basically. Our rebel friends are able to steal the carrier for themselves, and they're going to give Sham Syndulla the destruction that he wants. They load up the TIE bomber with the explosives that the Twi'lek rebels had brought aboard, and they launch it towards the light cruiser. And then Sham Syndulla in another ship blasts that ship, causing enough damage on the light cruiser to cause it to go all explodey and crash into the surface of Ryloth, as he wanted for his message statement against the Empire. It's really, really, I think it's a fun episode. It's great. You know, we get the post-mortem basically, where Sham lets Hera know that the theft of the carriers rallied the people of Ryloth. So, you know, there's more. It's causing more people to join the Ryloth rebel cell, and so they leave on very good terms with each other. And the crew of the Ghost watch as Sham and his Twi'lek partners head back to Ryloth. It's a great time for this show. It's a great time in general for Star Wars. I don't even know how to say it otherwise. I like these episodes where we pull back the layers. We see more of the family connections, because again, this is a Star Wars show that really puts a lot of emphasis on a family dynamic. So seeing how Hera was shaped, what drives her, what motivates her, how she was pushed as a child, is very telling. It shows a lot. You know, she learned a lot from her father, but obviously what we neglected to mention as one of the big moments of divide between Hera and her father is the death of her mother, because that causes Sham to become way more invested in freedom fighting against the Empire than raising his children, raising Hera. He sort of forgets to be a father and just wants to raise more soldiers to fight against the Empire. Again, Hera's mother killed by the Empire. She was part of the Twi'lek rebellion that was going on after the Clone Wars. And we do get a taste of that in the Bad Batch. You know, you can go back and watch those early episodes of the Bad Batch. I think it's in episodes 11, 12-ish, where we go to Ryloth. We see more Sham Syndulla. We see a young Hera. We see Chopper with her. So they do a lot of dot connecting throughout these series, and I think it really tells a lot about the character. And again, we're focusing on that family dynamic of the characters. We have our family of Spectres, but again, nice to touch base with the previous shows and show how characters from that, how what they've gone through has shaped them. Right? That's one of the unique opportunities we have with Hera, is a connection to the old Clone Wars show and a character that we got to know through that. So I think it's a really, really worthwhile episode if you're a big fan of Hera Syndulla. So I give it 8 buckets. I think it's better than most people give it credit for. It's rated a little bit low on the IMDb if you pay attention to that sort of thing. But I think people are overlooking it because it's not super big on mythology, not super big on Jedi Force stuff, and again, Star Wars is so much more than that. And, that's a great part of Star Wars is Star Wars is Force and mythology and Jedis and Sith, but so much more. And that's all I got to say about this episode, friends. It's a good one. Give it a rewatch. Check it out. Fun times. All right. That's it for this week. Not a lot of things happening in Star Wars news. I did read some new Star Wars comics recently, and if I mentioned it last time, I was not a big fan of the Jedi Knights number 3 issue, but number 4, 2 thumbs up. Really dig it. Check that one out if you're reading the comics. We'll talk more about some of the other books that are out. The Kylo Ren comic has been interesting. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it, but it's been interesting. And then the main Star Wars title, I don't quite have a feel for that one just yet as well. Also, we are rocketing towards the conclusion of the High Republic. So that might be something that we do a bit of a post-mortem on at the end. The final book is about to be out in a week or two. But I think there's still some comics that need to come out first before everything kind of wraps up in a grand conclusion. So while I want to read that book, I may wait and read it at the very end after some of the comics have wrapped up. We'll see just how that kind of goes and how that works into my timeline for getting those sort of things checked off. But again, I have enjoyed the High Republic. I am sort of sad to see it go, but I can't wait to see how they wrap it up. So yeah, things to look forward to in our conversations as we move into the summer months. We'll be here rewatching Star Wars Rebels. We'll be talking about the comics. We'll be talking about whatever happens in the news. And hey, we're going to be back next week, friends. Go out there, be great Star Wars fans. You know what to do. You are awesome. You are the best Buckethead Nation. You are the best batch of Star Wars fans on the entire planet, the entire galaxy. So make sure you're on the socials with us. We're at Mando_Vision, Twitter, X, Instagram. We're at Mando Vision at Blue Sky. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If possible or so inclined, give us those sweet 5-star reviews because they help the independent podcast like us stand out, not get lost in the shuffle. Friends, I just realized I've been talking kind of fast, a little caffeinated today. So I hope I wasn't too fast for you. Maybe you had to slow it down a little bit. I apologize if that was the case. But I will endeavor to keep the pace a bit slower next time around. Maybe we'll go after dark again. That forces me to talk a little bit slower. But today, it's Monday as I record, which Monday is my new Friday, which means I'm a little fired up because my weekend has just begun. All right, Bucketheads. We will be back next week for more Star Wars Rebels, unless something incredibly amazing happens and we have to talk about it. But otherwise, we'll be back next week with another installment of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch. Until then, again, be great, Bucketheads. Make more Bucketheads. And we'll talk to you soon. But remember, this podcast, it only ends one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap!